rise and join us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let the roll call show all board members are present except for Eric Minks tonight. And we will go right into our student showcase. Come on up.
Hi,
We're excited to have.
excited and nervous.
You don't be nervous.
I won't.
Don't be nervous. We're just excited to have you here.
Do I have, I can share my screen, Emily?
Yes,
Emily, what's the best way for her to get the presentation on the screen?
if she joins the Zoom and then shares the screen is probably easiest.
So. I'm already in it. This is the issue.
If you wanna email me your presentation and I can get in on.
And Emily has it, so she can
It's on
always
the
put it
agenda.
up. Yep, I mean, worst case scenario, we'll roll with it.
I did promise you technical issues.
I think I'm gonna stay in this position next. So I'm just gonna stay. Yes. But elections for student council on Friday. So not that it would work out, but I think.
All right, I'm gonna roll with it.
I'm just gonna stay. Cause.
All right.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jeanette Damon, and I teach
Jeanette.
over at Student Services at the ALC. I only have 3 minutes, so I'm gonna briefly talk.
We were just going on.
Yeah, you have more than 3 minutes.
It's just a guideline. Yeah.
So we don't have like my.
Remember that, Sarah.
Yeah.
Sim River is something near and dear to my heart, which I'll get into in a minute. But I went to Japan for the second time this fall to basically present the big project that I helped publish way back in grad school. So what it is a very, very, very cool international, we go all around the world. How to put it briefly, it was just St. Cloud State and Japan that started it. And I helped translate a lot of it into the English side. And from there, because I can talk on to that, what it really just is, come on, there we go. When we're in a classroom, 7th grade, 10th grade, doesn't matter. If I go, is that water, that lake water clean, dirty? Most kids are like, it's damn, I don't know. And so a lot of what this does is take that microscopic stuff in the water and go, hey, I can show you at a bigger level so you understand how we as scientists decide what water quality is. And in the state of Minnesota, we have 10,000 lakes, and usually one of my students has gone fishing or something. And so that's kind of where it came up from, is it's really hard to see that stuff. And so that's why we developed something that students can, without using a microscope and searching for hours, look at it. So I'm just gonna show you it because you'll get the gist. When you see it, you'll be like, oh, got it. She's saying a lot of things. And so when we started, it was only 2 languages, and now we've got a ton, and it's a river. So this is where I go back for technology.
What does the sim mean?
The sim is simulation.
Oh, sim river, okay.
Yeah, that's all good. Can we see that now? Yes, we can. So you see it's a river, so I can say, hey, it's the rum. That's what's great, is I can bring it home now and say it's the Rum River. And what I do is I'm like, especially high school, I go, make your river. And at first they want to kill everything. So they want to put a bunch of cities down there without any sewage treatment plants. So they want to just kill it all. And I go, that's great, but let's make it like where we live. And so they'll be like, okay, well, I sort of live in Princeton, you know, and there's like, let's just say there's 5,000-ish. And I better put that sewage treatment plant in because we do have something. But then I have kids that are also on a farm, and there might not be that many people around. And so we can actually make this just like in town or wherever they live. A lot of kids I practiced with is the Mississippi. It's a very popular one. And once we do that, we can, and my Japanese colleagues did all of the fun stuff, so you can make it winter. Ooh.
Nice.
Spring, cherry blossoms. And then you sample. So you take a sample, hit okay, and instead of searching for these tiny little things, we made a slide for you to look at. Now, in the state of Minnesota, the word algae gets a really bad rap. If you've ever actually heard anything about lake kills, right? We see green algae at the top and we are like, gross, means it's dirty. Technically, there's more than one kind of algae, and students don't get that whatsoever. So I get really excited about algae, and specifically something called diatoms, and they look at me like I'm crazy. And then after all, they're like, okay, it's a different algae. It's really important to the environment. All right, so what do we do now, Miss Damon? Well, we get to identify them. So I can click on this, and it already comes up, instead of going through those old Minnesota guides, like the old tree guides and the bird guides, and it has a guide there for you, and you identify it, and it comes up with this adorable Japanese animation where it's all good with a smiley face. If you get it wrong, not so good. And that's what they do. And then we come up with a whole table. So I can auto do it, or I can make the kids go in and do it. And it gives me all the different species of algae. And so from here, this is where we talk about, right now, if I put out a bunch of food, you all would have a preference on what you would want to eat. Let's say it's cookies. If I have Oreos out, chocolate chip, and then those wafers, you'd have a preference. Hey, surprisingly, those tiny zooplankton and fish, they also have a preference in algae. And so they really like this stuff better than maybe our blue, green, or green. And I know it seems complex, but once they start to understand that even small things have a preference, then they can look at the river and think, well, is there enough of that preference? And is that what's driving the issue of water quality, good or bad? So to make a long story short, after all of this, once they kind of get it down to maybe what they know about algae, how we do water quality, I can go out to the Rum River and take a sample. They can look at that sample now and go, it has a lot of these diatoms, but not a lot of these diatoms. It might not be that clean, or it has a bunch of these. Rum River's pretty great where I live. And so that's kind of the gist of it. It's a lot. 30 minutes made me nervous. But that is the gist of the program. So what did that mean for Japan? Let's see if I can still go back and show this. I'm getting better. It's been a while since I've done Zoom.
So I'm assuming you've done the Rum River, right?
I haven't. Okay, so that's what I'm getting to is,
Okay.
yeah, my colleague is not here today out of St. Cloud State. So I still collaborate with St. Cloud State. He'll come in and talk to my students if I need him to. He has grad students that will gladly make me slides out of the Rum River. So that's kind of the next step, is to collab on that. And then the second reason we went to Japan is it would be really cool to do some vlogging with their students. It's a 14-hour difference, but it'd be really cool if we could ask water quality questions between the countries. Cool. And have conversations about how we're not that different and how we're dealing with water quality. And so I'd show you the slide, but I haven't figured out how to get back. It's really just me presenting with a bunch of other teachers in the country, talking about what we each do in our country, and just helping keep the cause going, I guess. Yeah, so that's the
So do you
small.
guys go out and do take actual water samples too?
Mhm.
Yeah, but the kids love that. I remember doing that in high school.
Yeah, well,
That's
and
all
I know in the middle
weird.
school, they still do, now and then, yeah,
High school, we do not,
yes,
that I'm aware of.
Oh, you haven't taken biology?
Yes, I have.
10th grade.
Never mind.
Yeah, I don't
okay.
recall that. But
Is this something that you've had an opportunity to share with your colleagues in the science department yet?
I think they
Yeah.
know it's there, I haven't, I mean, they know I've published on it, but I don't think I've had, because of my building
Mhm.
and just, we haven't had a lot of time to talk about that per se. Plus, I'm really bad at upping myself and saying what a great.
You should stop, because this is awesome.
It is pretty neat.
Well, thanks. But yes, I think it'd be awesome. I've done it in middle school, so 7th graders, it's actually really fun to do with them too. Usually I have to give them a little bit more instruction, but it's really fun. Yeah,
Is this something that are at the high
It's
school,
free.
do the high school teachers know about that?
that's kind of what he was asking me,
Oh.
so.
Yeah, I think that we'll
It'd be-
make that happen. I think that
Esther
this is important work for
so I
us to
know
make sure that we.
Esty or Esteberg would really like this, so would Layman. E-Club has done water testing.
And I talked to them too,
In the
so I mean, it'd be
past,
cool just to
so
find some time outside
It'd be
of.
cool to compare. and
What
stuff.
did you say, the what club?
E-Club, it's Environment Club. We meet every other Wednesday.
Who runs that?
Pal, Valdivieso, and Addie Lumberg, and,
Who's the admin?
Yeah,
Who's
who's the teacher?
Chris. Or no, Moses, sorry. Moses.
Oh.
So yeah,
I'd be down with meeting all of you sometime.
I know, I was, as I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is really
That'd be
cool.
so
Mhm.
cool. Okay,
It's a little collaboration.
yeah,
Mhm.
we could go get samples.
Yes.
And her face lights up.
Ah,
No, because we've done samples in the past, and we've done it like in classrooms, so it'd be cool to see like. How to compare.
Okay,
Because we've been using really old instruments that we found in random cupboards.
well, but we still use them, so that's what's cool, like Secchi discs and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did those in high school, like when, like probably 2000, we'd go test all the lakes on Saturdays if we needed extra credit.
What?
I spent a lot of
That's an
Saturdays.
excellent idea, right there, I'll see.
Everybody's learning something, you know?
But yeah, no,
I
this is
remember
really cool.
testing elk lake.
state park.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Tell us about your experience overseas with your colleagues in another country.
Gosh, so I went in 2009 to basically get the project finished up so we could publish on it over here. It's won awards over there. And that was fun because a lot of those people that I met through the main college were students or just started teaching. So when I went back this year, a lot of them were now teachers or professors, or the main one, my Amasan, he's retired now, but he flies over to India and shares this program with them now. So he's always running around to different countries to keep sharing the program. And but the colleague part for the symposium was everybody around the world. So my professor out of St. Cloud State is probably top 10 diatomists in the world, which is nerdy to say. You're like a
No,
brown
super
algae
cool.
specialist.
That's super cool.
But so, you know, he was over there presenting his work and everyone has all this different stuff. And I just happened to do this kind of thing. So, yeah.
How did you stumble across this? Like, how did this idea? Or we could talk later too, but.
Yeah, that's more about what was I gonna do after grad school?
I'm a bio.
What should I do for my master's? And I guess I do like teaching, so. But yes, that would be a good conversation
Yeah.
for the long haul, yeah. I just love algae, can't you tell? Yeah.
I think it'd be a great feature story for the Union Times, I don't know. Showcase our teacher who's been published, who's going over to Japan
I can send you the
to work
free
with
link.
scientists.
Free link.
Well,
You go test your backer.
And I think that was the biggest thing is a lot of publications you have to pay for through all these firewalls. And if it's gonna be something for teaching and it's important for, I mean, let's be real here, water quality is an important thing across the globe. Why are we charging for it? Why would we ever charge for it? pretty ridiculous, so, yeah.
This is really cool.
No, thanks.
Any other questions? Outstanding.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll hang.
It was
Okay.
totally painless.
Thanks.
Yeah, they scared you with this 3-minute thing. Hmm.
They did.
Eric.
Or
was
the
maybe
one,
one of
I'm
us.
just, I'm
There
guessing
was
there
one
was
of
one
us.
person.
Stop.
It's just a guideline.
All right, next on the agenda is citizen comments. I'm assuming that sheet is empty back there. Then we have, board member committee reports. And let's start with Sue.
I went to, the day at the Capitol with Ed and Melissa and Ben, and Sarah. And, we, met with 6 legislators and told our story and asked for their help, and it was good. It was a good day. That was all. Oh, and students went too. Yes.
Eric,
Nothing to report.
Don,
I had agenda planning and policy.
Melissa?
I also was at the day at the Capitol, which was very exciting. It was really interesting to get to be down there and meet all these people, these decision makers. You like hear about on the news and I'm like, oh yeah, I met that guy, you know, it's cool. I also just, in Princeton here, we had the All City Choir concert, which was, as always, pretty amazing to get all the kids to actually do things together, a whole wall of them. It's pretty sweet. I also had policy, and then I just had 2 fun, like, random things that I helped out with this week. At our room did, Ms. Bartholomew in the primary did glazing pots with kindergartners for the first time. So I would like to publicly shout her out because I was brave.
That's very.
I went and volunteered for it, and I just told her at the end, I was like, I'm not sure how you do this all day, because she's so patient and just getting the kids to do all this art stuff and kindergartners, you know, it was a lot. So I'm actually going back next week to help, so we'll see if I make it again. And then I also just wanted to, I mean, as most of us know, I'm a pretty big fan of our Spanish immersion, but we're able to have a cool moment we have one of the Amity students staying with us, and she's taught us to make this food called arepas, and they're just these little bread things. Anyway, so Lincoln really wanted to make them for his class, so we made them at home, and then we took pictures as we did it, and then we were able to bring them the next morning and give them out to the class, and he got to show his pictures, and the student staying with us, Anna, came and shared with the class. It was just really cool, and I'm just really proud of our district that we have the opportunity to do things like that, and the kids were so excited about it, and then they were really disappointed when they didn't realize they weren't like covered in sugar or anything. So it was 50-50 on whether they liked them or not. But it was a moment I was really proud to be a part of.
At
So
least they tried something different.
yes, and healthy,
Step
you
in the
know.
right
I was like,
direction.
yeah. So, anyway, sorry.
Chad?
I had policy.
Okay. I also attended, the day at the Capitol, and, it was such a good day. And I think we need to do it every year, for
Yes.
sure. Because it was so worthwhile to go down there and to be able to talk to, you know, some of these movers and shaker kind of people, and, you know, whether they listen to us or not, we'll find out, but, I mean, at least we try, right? And then I had agenda planning too for the meeting, so that was it. Student council report.
Yeah, the Capitol visit, we met with like multiple senators and representatives. It was an awesome experience, one of my like core memories for sure. It was just really cool, and I gotta say that I went to the Capitol with school board members, like representing Princeton. Like, yes, people go to the Capitol, but like to go for that reason was just amazing and an awesome experience that I don't think I'll ever forget. To be doing it every year, even to even think about that, like that would be amazing. So yes, thank you for inviting me and Lena. Lena's not here, but she was also really excited because she wants to do, like, she talked about running for senator one day. So
She looked like she belonged there. We were talking
Yeah, she
about
did.
that one.
Yes.
We both kind of did.
She just like fit in.
Mhm. So that was cool for her. Swan Drive is still happening, so stuff we want and need. The dates have changed, so instead of ending on the 22nd, it ends on the 28th. So there's a box in front of the high school if you want to donate stuff. Prom dress drive, if you know anyone who needs a prom dress or pocket square or tie, just have them email the high school counselor and they'll send them the slideshow. Otherwise, I have access to the slideshow as well. So just email me, we'll get that to them. All city concert happened, that was fun, chaotic, but always a blast. Registration just got handed out Monday, Wednesday, not really sure, but it was handed out and they're due Friday. So all those high schoolers registering for next year. And a little thing about me, I started YST at the primary school this week. Thank you, Markhausen, for allowing me. It's
Thanks for
been,
coming.
yes, of course, it's been an absolute blast. Kindergartners roasting me on Spanish is a new experience for me. Didn't think that would ever happen, but now the experience has happened. But no, in all seriousness, I love going over there, seeing their little faces. Today I even realized like the impact I make. There was a girl who was like crying and like, I just held her for a solid minute and then she like went off and was fine and I helped the kid with his math. How to read a clock. They also make me second guess myself, whether the big hand or the little hand's the hour. I was like, let me check. No, but yes, great experience overall.
Oh, that's awesome, thank you. Ben?
Yeah, a lot of people have referenced the Capitol. I'll echo that. It was a great day. You know, I think that I counted having some strong interactions with probably 12 different, because, you know, I guess even when you can catch somebody in the hall and have a good 5-minute conversation with them, we were able to have some of those that we didn't expect. And we were able to actually get every chair of every education committee, which, you know, we could get set up to go with MSBA, MESAC, or any of this. They're never gonna be able to broker meetings with each chair of those committees. It's almost impossible to do, and we did it, and I think that was pretty cool. And, you know, I think the reality is though, and we heard that, is that there's not gonna be a whole lot of changes that happens this session as it relates to education, especially not financially. But I think that everything that we did and do is setting the stage for next year, which the following year, which is a big year as it relates to decisions for education. And the landscape of the Capitol will be potentially way different, right? I mean, with this trifecta, if you will, for the last 2 years, that, you know, that either will stay or potentially change. And I guess the makeup of who has control or majority in the different bodies really do impact so many different things that you do. One change is that we have a new representative representing us. Brian Lawrence was voted in last evening, and I was able to have conversations with him this morning already and have coffee set up with him on Friday morning. So we'll start connecting with him, and hopefully I'll be able to use some of the relationships that I have with senators and representatives to kind of get him connected with some good mentors, because I'm guessing that he won't know how it all works. So we'll get him connected with that guy, that Greg Davids that we talked to.
Now we're talking. I like that guy.
There's only, we all were together for most of the day, but there was one period of time we all had to split up because we had like 3 meetings at the same time. So we all had different experiences. So no, it was good. We have some major decisions that we made just recently as it relates to leadership in our school district. I used my authority as superintendent to reassign Sarah Markshausen to be the middle school principal. And I think she's a strong fit, and she's gonna do great things there. Obviously, folks at the primary school are disappointed. But I think Sarah has, in her 6 years at the primary, has left a legacy, and her work will stand the test of time, and that great work will continue. We're on our quest to find our next principal at the primary school, and we just opened it up, and it's gonna be open for another week or two. And we'll go through an extensive process similar to what we've done for those of you that participated in the high school process last year. We will involve as many stakeholders as we possibly can to get lots of input, and then we'll move forward with that selection. So that work will be happening in the coming months. We're gonna get a presentation this evening on the start time task force, so that will be interesting for us to hear where we're at with some of that work. On March 27th, we have our big, which is I think a week from now, our big community task force that's more of a comprehensive look at it. My intent is to give kind of an overview snapshot of where the district is with some operating budget, some of the work that we've done in facilities. And then also talk a little bit about just funding in Minnesota. And then we're going to go through protocol to get input from the stakeholders that are there as well. So there'll be some collaboration and work that will happen at the groups there too. I think Emily said we had 87 RSVPs. So, you know, maybe we'll get a few more even before it's all said and done. So I'm happy with that kind of a turnout. So that is happening. We're gonna talk to you a little bit about the revised budget this evening. So I'll hold my remarks on that. And then I'll make some commentary just on our revised budget and then how that's gonna impact our planning and budget for next school year as well. So I'll hold that. There's a nice reference to the Tiger Career Academy. So that's exciting that work is happening, more mentorship opportunities, authentic real life experiences for our students at the high school. Again, we're pleased, but we're not satisfied with that work. We've seen some growth. We're getting good momentum. We still have a lot of more work to do, right? So, but it is nice to see that we are constantly seeing progress there. Thank you for your comments on Spanish immersion. Yes, we're very proud of that. You know, at the end of the day, we're just trying to provide opportunities for every student, knowing that every student is different. Every student has different skills and gifts and talents, but also different struggles. And it's this huge challenge we have is to meet the needs of all 3,300 of our students, and they're all different. And we take that challenge, and we want to do strong work. So unless you have any other questions, I'll close my comments.
The community meeting on the 27th, we got that posted, so all board members are welcome to attend.
Yes, it is a posted meeting. Yep. And you know, this kind of goes to our facilities issue.
Yep.
But we don't really have great places in our district to meet with people, right?
Is that the middle school?
It's the middle school, the middle school media center, and is where we're gonna be. We'll probably have to bring in a few more tables to be able to fit that number of people in there. And of course, we'll put our we'll roll our little technology out and put our, I don't know, screen up, and we'll present from there. But that's where we're gonna do it.
Okay. Good deal. Any other questions for Ben or?
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to approve the agenda. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented? So moved. Motion's been made by Melissa. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Sue. Any comments or questions on the agenda? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Agenda is approved. Is there a motion to act on the previous board meeting minutes and approve those? So moved. Motion's been made by Don. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Eric Stramberg. Any comments or questions on those? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Consent agenda. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? Motion's been made by Chad. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Melissa. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved. We move on to our one and only information item. Start time task force update.
It's a different pressure being over here. You know, you're asking the wrong person. My children have to teach me how to use the things.
As I was reading through, looking through the presentation, I was realizing how complex of an issue this is. I'm like, oh my goodness.
It is more than you would even like. Then every time we would have a meeting, it was like, well, now here's a new thing we discovered that could affect that it would, yeah, it's.
But you guys look like, I mean, it looks very thorough, so that's
We got
good.
Sarah leading us and she's.
Covering all the bases.
I mean, really though, the team, you know what I love, we'll dive into all of it. Jason's helping me. It's giving me the little exclamation mark that it won't let me share. So thank you, Jason, for helping me. But what I love about the Start Time Task Force is that you can really see how people are like leaning in to listen to all the different multiple perspectives, and the level of respect that the team, I think, has for each other and the different perspectives is pretty high. In fact, the last time that we met, I thanked them for that. You can just see that people are really listening and really trying to understand and hear the, as you said, Deb, it's a multi-layered,
If there was things on there, I'm like, well, I never thought of that.
I just had to know. Just pops up. It's Jenny. It's all good. You're not supposed to. So I've worked with Matt Julius for about almost 20 years. Yeah. I worked in the public safety department.
It's not a real presentation unless there's.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
In the meantime, there is a slide, I think it's number 9, that I talk about that is gonna just have a bunch of links.
I got it.
Thanks, Ben got it for us.
Thank you,
I don't know why my Zoom.
You just did the same thing.
All right, we're just gonna go this way.
So just tell me when you want me to move up or down.
How about we do some introductions now that we have everything up?
Yeah.
I'm Jen Super and I am a parent of 2 in the school district and just in the stakeholder, and I'm glad you all had a great day at the Capitol. I work down on the complex, so I always love to hear that people have a good experience when they come down to visit.
You should have stopped and visited.
Oh, I know. I could have here, let you see the Supreme Court. Oh,
Oh, that would have been cool. We did peek in.
we haven't in.
All of us were. We peeked in.
Well, we'll be down there again next year.
I hopefully I'm still there too. Sarah Markshausen, facilitator for the task force as well.
Melissa Lynch, board member, parent, lots of things.
I thank Melissa and Jen for coming to present with me this evening. We originally, we needed to move the board meeting, so I don't know if the Wednesday it just didn't work for as many people. But So we're honored to be able to come and share the strong work that the task force has done. We have a really strong process in place, and one of the first things that we did was we reviewed what that process would look like and sound like at our first meeting. And part of that first meeting was to develop what our different roles and responsibilities are. Okay, because we all have different roles on the task force. So the role of the chair and the facilitator is I am a neutral perspective, very transparent. So anything that comes my way, I'm like, okay, task force, here it is. So that we can all be the holders of that information because there are so many different layers to it. And then getting the task force what they would need in order to help make a recommendation to the district. We have the recorder. The recorder is Jessica Town Gunderson. She's part of the task force from the student learning perspective. And so she gets the job of synthesizing and summarizing everything, and that is a tricky job to do. We've had some fun with it with if she's ever gone, who would be in that role. But then one of the things, part of that transparency piece that's really important to us in the task force and beyond for the community is making sure that everyone has access to the presentations that have been developed that we've done, and then all of the minutes as well. So if you were to click on that link, everything is linked in there as well. There's a special spot on the website for that. And so then what we started to do in those first meetings is we talked about what is our goal? And we had a discussion, actually quite a long discussion about the desired result. And we spent a good chunk of time.
The first meeting, I feel like.
It was, but I think that the time that was spent on, okay, what is our task and what is our goal? I really respected the amount of time that we kind of had a little like productive struggle, if you would, almost kind of back and forth, because that's how serious everyone on that team is taking it. And essentially we just came up with that our goal is to make a recommendation that is first student focused and also something that is logistically feasible. Because we want to make sure that we can share a recommendation that is actually something that could potentially be implemented. And then, so then we started to talk about what are our norms. So before we even got started, that's really what the whole first meeting was establishing roles, norms, things that are out of our control and influence. And when we popcorned out what our norms would be, and you can kind of read them there on the different things that we decided all as a group that would keep us grounded. And then subsequently, every meeting that we had after, we would take a quick moment to review our roles and responsibilities and our norms and things here that are out of our influence and control too, just to help ground us in our conversation before we get started. This is me, right?
Oh, wait, can you go back up so I can see? So the out of our control influence, this one, I feel like we had, when we were trying to come up with our, like our main, our mission, right? We had so many things in there that we pulled out a lot of them and added them to the things that are somewhat out of our control and things to consider. So we kind of split all our ideas up besides the basic function of the mission. So, things like we have to remain within our district budget, adding staff, the school calendar instruction minutes, reasonable start and end times, our current contract, which has now changed a little bit, so, but not too much. Anyway, registration deadlines, and that was more for if we were gonna be making any changes that would affect this upcoming school year, because people are already starting to plan for what to do with childcare, vacations, etc. Start times for away events, that was the sports, right? Yeah, so it's a sport away events, what the norms are for the rest of our conference, let's see, the impact on the other school who depend on our extracurriculars, the public response to our recommendation, which has been very well managed by Sarah. I think we get to that later. And then, of course, the shortest of officials, which is affecting all of us. And then from that part of that came the things to consider. So just things to keep at the top of our minds. So one of the things we were very concerned about as a group was the access that students have to their teachers, and then the teachers, like whether they're athletes or not. So if the teacher leaves to coach, that still is unfair to some of those students. And if the students have to leave and then don't have the teacher, then that's not fair to them. So we that's something that was, those first couple ones pretty much covers that. Flexible scheduling, we talked about a bunch of different options, like different ways to end school earlier, maybe making like gym at last credit or not in last credit, the end of the day, so that those athletes could still get credit for the class. Excuse me. And then, yeah, the impact on the community, the why that drives us, the solutions, there's many different districts, there's a whole slide on it coming up, many different districts that are also dealing with this problem, and trying to find the best solutions for their district. I know student supervision is always an issue, and then the closer start times. One thing pretty much everyone said was that if we could get our schools closer for start times, that could really help a lot of parents out. Maybe even if the middle school ended earlier because it was closer to the primary than or closer to the high school, then they would be able to do their sports at the same time. Just different things like that.
It was
Am I
kind of
saying that
the
right?
overall emerged theme
Yeah.
throughout all of the discussions that we've had. Couple of things we realized was, that we collectively as a group realized is that there isn't going to be one thing that just fixes it or makes it better. It's probably a compilation of things, because even as like Melissa shared, like if you can try to be creative with scheduling, well, you can only do so much with a master schedule as well. And there's other layers that go into a master schedule. But the main overall merge theme was what could we do for our secondary students even, something small, perhaps even, to have them end a little bit earlier. Because right now you have your high school kids getting out at 3:15 and your middle school students are getting out at 3:30. And in the past, middle school has been out before 3 o'clock, 3:15, but it just kind of seems like those extra 15 minutes are really kind of pushing it over.
It affected a lot more than we ever thought.
Yeah, and there was a lot of discussion of like, kind of like what you said, Melissa, that for coaches and activities, you'll see some data later on some slides, because we compiled our own here in Princeton, to see how students are maybe being affected, not only for the athletes or those kids involved in activities that are leaving, but those that are not in activities when that teacher has to go leave, and then a guest teacher is brought in to teach that core content area. And like middle school or high school math, I don't know how well this gal would do teaching middle school math. Don't tell that to the new middle school people. But so there was a lot of discussion around the activities part, and then also around the student learning part. And then so this will share a little bit about the reality of what we're facing with transportation dynamics as well.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about how some of the transportation is out of our control, but maybe not as much as we originally thought. So we went back to discuss what was it like before the pandemic, when all the kids rode the same bus, K through 12. It was a single tiered system, and that's all that we knew, right? Because we were a small town. And then the change happened during the pandemic and went to the tiered busing. I was a bit surprised to learn financially there wasn't a substantial difference when we moved to tier busing. But then in learning, it really came down to the shortage of bus drivers. And even today, for the number of people that say, well, why can't we go back to the way it was? Well, because 12 bus routes would get canceled every day because they just don't have enough people, right? It's not that they don't have enough buses. It's not really about the money. It doesn't sound like it really comes down to the people. And so I think that is hugely impactful as we have conversations with people. Also, the behavioral issues that, that I think the schools had to respond to, and the bus drivers were facing with that varied age group from K through 12. I heard stories from my elementary kids. So just the number of bus routes prior, we were between 33 and 35 and went down to 23. So that's where they're able to be able to support the number of routes that we have. I was also very interested to learn that on an average day, even now, they're 4 drivers short. which they are pulling from everyone to drive a bus. It was fascinating.
Mr. Senni?
Yeah. One of them shared, they had come from another state, and in that state, their athletic coaches are required to learn how to drive the bus, and the coaches are the bus drivers.
Wow.
And the majority of our coaches were like, nope, I'm done. Yeah, not doing it.
It's actually shifting. We're getting more of our drivers to, or more of our coaches to take the courses. We're increasing that.
That's awesome.
It's a push, but we're
It's
getting
a
there.
good goal.
It's a note
It
to.
is. We got baseball, we've got some others that are doing it.
Super one.
Yeah, yeah, that's good to know. So the percentage of students who ride the bus, not surprised to see that those elementary numbers are much higher than secondary. We did chuckle a little bit that maybe the elementary numbers are a little low, given the drop-off line in the morning. And then the percentage of students that are riding the bus by the building. So just really not an option to go back to the one tier. So
So what we would do, sorry, before Melissa shares, is anytime, so this is a compilation, this presentation of all of the meetings that we've had together so far as a task force. So in between each of the meetings, we had something called like a parking lot where people could write questions or wonderings that they would have to help us keep focused, to have an efficient meeting when we were together. And then, so the way that we found out all of this was back and forth in between those meetings. Then I would take those parking lot questions that people would have, and then I would find answers to the questions that they would have. So what you're seeing here is a compilation of the last 3, 4, however many times, 3 meetings that we've had. It wasn't all in one.
Right.
Yeah.
That would have been a very long meeting. So the next slide here, I recommend, we'll go over some of it in the notes, but I recommend you guys taking just a look at it. The district-wide activities, it was a nice reminder just to see like how much we actually offer our students. So I was just like, yeah, cool us. But also the comparables, there's a lot of, I think we had more schools were flopped the way that we have for times
Yeah.
currently. And then the others, and then there were some that were about the same, some that are going to be changing, like Monticello's going to be doing a new one. I think Stillwater, they're not in our conference, but they're another one that was
Stillwater
dealing
is
with
going
it
to what we have now.
now, right? So, and with all the sleep studies, so much of it just came back to saying, yeah, the older kids need the later start. I mean, less accidents, better attendance. I'm trying to help me out, ladies, anything else?
Sleep, in fact, there was to a point where we just kind of like, to be honest, I myself even, because everything that was found was advocating
same,
for
yeah.
secondary later. Like just trying to even find something where it said from a sleep study perspective and all those things like Melissa just shared, intentionally to flip it, you couldn't, which was pretty powerful in that absence as well of finding that. And the way that we determined what data we were going to look at, I think it's important to acknowledge too, that this is beyond the task force. So when the initial, when Mr. Martin sent out the initial, hey, are you interested in being part of the task force? There was a question that said, what is the data or the research that you're interested in knowing? So what I did as facilitator was I took all of that, even beyond the task force members, and compiled that into 7 different areas, and then shared that with the task force. And then the task force said, okay, here are those top areas that we're the most interested in needing to know information about. So that's how that research and data was selected for us to review.
So, and then I think I covered, the main point, or the first point is the main point too. We did talk a lot about this because every time one person would bring something up for one group, then somebody's like, well, what about this group? And there's not going to be a perfect solution. So our goal kind of is what is the best for the most. So getting the most benefit for our students and the most benefit for the athletes, the coaches, just trying to make we know not everything's gonna be perfect. Everyone is gonna have an issue. That's just the way it works. But just to do the best we can for the overall group. I kind of talked about that. Let's see. Oh, the student behavior, and she kind of mentioned that too, like with the busing, the same thing. If the student behavior, people were kind of concerned about the lull between activities and school time. But we also did point out that like there's lots of clubs that start in the morning before school, and those kids get there earlier. And as far as I know, there's not any messing around going on before school that doesn't have after. So I mean, that's not gonna be as much of a problem in the high school age, but we did talk more about the middle school, that might be more of an issue with behaviors. And then, we did say students at the middle school and high school are the most affected, and then, the start time decisions, because we had talked about, well, what if we just shorten the school day? But then that would change contract times, so then that would have to go parallel with our HR discussion, which I don't think, like, I thought of as a board member, because now I'm doing this all the time with these kind of things, but I wouldn't have thought about that beforehand, because like, oh yeah, sure, we'll shorten the day and just add a couple extra to the end of the year, but that's a whole new contract situation then. So we did talk about that in the group as well. And then I think you can go to the next one there. So we did talk about having the start time, end times being closer ideally, than the secondary ending earlier. We also talked a lot about the first, our recommendation, really honestly, Palmer has to, we met with Palmer, they have to go through and see what's feasible for them. So once we get the, and I'm stealing somebody's something, once we get to the next, well, they're meeting right now, and then once we have a smaller group of us that will be meeting with Palmer, and then we'll take that information and present it to our larger task force group.
So something that kind of in this overall emerged discussion as well is just that recognition that, is there something maybe small that could be done for next year, knowing that there's so many layers for staffing, for families, our community members, or staff, like just all of it, right? To see that full picture. And we did talk, you might hear that we talked a little bit about the Monticello idea. It's not some, the old Monticello, what they are doing, it's not so much that we can take what Monticello is doing and fit it into our community, because they have very much a different demographics as well.
It's the creativity.
But we talked a lot, exactly right. We talked a lot about some of the things that Monticello and the process that they use to come up with some larger adjustments to their transportation schedule. We actually called and talked to the Monticello superintendent and the Hoagland manager who runs their bus company to say, okay, what are you guys doing? You know, because if you can take just an idea here or there and kind of brainstorm it. And what we learned is that they actually haven't even started what they're about to do. They're starting that next year. And it took them 2 years to plan what they're going to start next year. And they needed to add, because statute has a minimum amount of instructional minutes that you need for students. And so, yes, they could close that gap a bit, but they had to add on student days at the end of the year to be able, so there's like that give and take. And because there's so many parallel items to human resources, that's why there's just so many layers to that deep creative thinking. And so then if you could please go down a little bit to the school and community feedback. We talked a lot about this as a task force in making sure that we had a way for people beyond the task force to give input. Like, we thought about the idea of a survey. We talked about that during our first 2 meetings. And we just kind of discussed a little bit the pros and the challenges with it. And in the end decided that because this is such a complex layered discussion, I mean, just even again, that productive struggle we would have back and forth, and there's so many layers that we're presenting tonight, a survey is hard to really capture all of that. And survey responses, you don't always get a good return rate, and you tend to get, both strong perspectives, but where does everybody in the middle kind of thing? And so because there's so many layers to it, then that's why, and this was important when that start time task force was formed, that there is, we have a wide representation, and I know I spoke to the board before about kind of the roles and people we all have on that. But so this is a way that we wanted to be able to provide that feedback beyond the task force. On that website, there is a community feedback form where people can give feedback to the task force. And then they can there's a question that says, would you like a follow-up? Yes or no? If they say no, they still get a follow-up from Markshausen that says, thank you for submitting, because we want to acknowledge and thank them for taking the time to share their feedback with us. And then if there was a response, then I went as facilitator and brought Jason with me from an HR perspective, because it's so parallel. And we met one-on-one with every single person that submitted a response. throughout this process too. And then whenever I would get those feedback, then I share those with the task force, either through email or presentations that we've done. So it's 100% transparent, and then all that gets put out on the website.
I appreciate it as a stakeholder that members of the district used the process to share their thoughts and feelings. They used the structure process versus going in another roundabout way that we have often encountered in our lives. And they respected the task force and the process. So I appreciated that from so a little bit more on transportation. Palmer has left us some glimmers of hope that there may be some other options out there. They're willing to come to the table and get creative about what some of our options might be. When Sarah talked about our demographics of Monticello being very different, like, well, what did that mean? Well, 80% of the Monticello students live within their city boundaries, and 20% lived out in the country kids, they call them, or Palmer calls them too, where Princeton is the exact opposite, with 20% in the city and, and 80% out further. And so, as they talk about, there isn't a solution that fits to the same two problems. So you all met with Palmer. They're looking at some different options for us. They asked us for some time. They asked the task force for some time to put together some ideas that they feel are feasible. And then they want to bring those ideas back to us. And so that's where there's a small group of us that will meet with Palmer when they're ready. And we can look at those options and ideas that they put on the table. And I think some of them are maybe immediate for next year. I was fascinated by how much 15 or 20 minutes would make a difference to the secondary schools. I mean, like, A large difference.
yes. I'm like, I can kill 15 minutes in a day. I didn't realize it was so important.
Right.
And so, that piece was fascinating to me. So even if we could make some of those minor changes to the schedule for next year, and then look at some other creative solutions for the following year. So we're kind of on pause, right? And waiting for Palmer to come back with some of their ideas. I appreciate them really coming to the table. So they have a representative on the task force, which I think is great. As a contracted partner, I don't know that they would be required to do that. But they seem to have a vested interest in helping us find a solution.
Yeah, one of the ideas, big idea with the Monticello piece is that it's almost like a hybrid, where you'd have you'd have the one tier and the second tier, but then you'd have like a middle one that would actually pick up both the younger and the more secondary students.
For the outlaying.
And you try and kind of take a look at where all the students are, and then how do you make that work? And I think that's the challenge that they're taking a look at. And like they said, I mean, well, if we can get even 10 minutes that's a win. And if we can get 20, that's even better. But the big idea also is, we need to get those secondary students out earlier, specifically the middle school. I think isn't the correct statement that the middle school is really the area that we have to solve the most issues.
Yeah, and when Jason and I went and met with, those one-on-ones, when we were meeting with some of the middle school staff that had submitted, that was definitely part of the conversation. Is we just said, okay, knowing there's all these variables, like what is kind of that ideal time for middle school to kind of be done? And that's exactly right, Ben. It was that idea of that 3 o'clock, 3:15, that 15 minutes is really kind of, it's really hard, because we even talked a little bit about, even if you still need a guest teacher for that last period of the day, if the core teacher could even be there to present the content, and then leave, and then have the guest teacher come in to help with the practicing of the skill, because teaching of that content is so high, right? So there was a lot of really good dialogue in that way. And then also just a lot of really creative, kind of going back to that, might not just be one thing, like what are other things like within a schedule that could be looked at, like from a master schedule, knowing there's lots of layers that go into that. But it's just been a really, I feel, productive,
I feel like we
problem
should also
solving.
point out that it did say that there could be changes for this upcoming school year, but if that was it, it would be like the 15 minutes we're kind of talking about, like, or the 10 to 20, it wouldn't be changing completely, you know, everything. They were looking at changing possible bus routes to take off a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there, or maybe changing some busing, so, I don't want anyone to panic or go telling everyone that our schedule is changing next year.
But if you cut off 15 minutes in the afternoon, don't you essentially have to add 15 minutes in the morning?
Well,
So having driven some of the routes, the drivers are getting to our primary school in plenty of time as the routes are existing. We just may have to tighten it up a little bit. And so they're maybe gonna only gain 5 minutes on the front end of pickup times, but you're gonna gain that then to be able to come out earlier in the afternoon.
Right.
So there is some tightening of the schedule that could be done. We really focus on trying to have our routes to be about an hour or less.
Right.
And, you know, I think we do a really good job with that. When these guys talk a little bit about those hybrid routes, those would probably have to be hour 15, hour 20, hour 30 in order to make that work.
Parents will love that.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
well, and
That's why
where
one of our
that's-
asks was
depending on where
60
you're at on
minutes
the
or
route,
less.
it's
And that's why one of the
Plus.
asks when we met with Palmer originally, when they went back to go work on the options, or what are your asks? And one of them was that 60-minute, because I know we worked really hard as a district to get that
on
done.
that, yes.
Well, it's finding hard to
Absolutely.
believe that
And-
Palmer's gonna be able to do anything because we're already 4 drivers short every day.
Well, and
now we're
that's,
asking them to figure out how they can.
They
tighten it.
actually were, I will give them, they were, when we met in the side and we have our number, they were like really excited to try and come up with
That's
some
awesome.
stuff, so I
Yeah.
say
I'm
we
glad
give
they're,
them their
like,
time and.
Excited that they wanna try to help figure
Yeah.
something out.
well, and that was just it. We thought we were getting all these creative ideas, right? And then that's where we just said, all right, we need to pause because we need to know what's logistically even options. Because, and again, and it's not that we're trying to take everything that Monticello does, we were just using that as like brainstorming. But like Ben and Jen said, that what's very different from us to them is that, I believe that they actually had to, like, their bus routes were shorter, so they had to lengthen them, right? Because of that double pickup. But they don't have as many kids on the outskirts. Their high population area is closer to the in, and that is a huge difference.
Yeah.
So that's where we just said, okay, we're gonna pause.
Yeah.
We went back to our desired result and said, okay, that logistically feasible piece, and so now we're just kind of
So
waiting.
to give a little perspective, I think my first 2 years before the pandemic that I was here, we had the 1 tier, right? In the high school, I mean, everyone was getting out in about probably 2:55 to 3:05, 3:10, because you still had to have that staggered time. So even with the high school getting out at like 3:15, it's really only 5, maybe 10 minutes longer than it was, you know, for the previous 50 years, right? But it's that, so I don't hear as many complaints from the high school, although I'm sure that there is some. It's that middle school having then that 3:30, that's kind of that big issue. And then the other piece that I remember when we had the 1 tier, okay, is, you know, we really tried to have that 60 minutes or less, but the reality was there was a lot of the routes we weren't able to do that. And that was one of the big complaints I would get, is the length of time that students run on routes. Because although we had it as a goal, 60 minutes or less, a lot of them were an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. That was hard. So the 1 tier was able to really get us to do that realistically, of the 60 minutes or less. The other issue was the behavior. The developmental stages of, you know, teenagers with 5, 6, 7-year-olds, and the elementary students being exposed to more sophisticated kind of behaviors and language, you know, wasn't great.
The fifth graders have taken over for the 12th grade.
Well, and that is interesting,
Yes.
because now that is a real thing. Now we do have issues between intermediate students and primary students. And, because there's a level of difference of developmental stages and sophistication even between, those students.
I agree with like the 15 minutes would be huge. I mean,
Yeah.
I coach middle school football and high school basketball. So I see the middle school kids, they are way more affected by this than the high school kids, because the middle school activities start at 4 o'clock. Everywhere we go is at least a half-hour bus ride.
Yeah.
Right? They're having to get out early every single day. And middle school participation with 7th and 8th graders in activities is like huge. The numbers are just huge because there's so many kids that want to try things. And like even high school, one thing I noticed this year, we had 14 away basketball games. Every one of my bus times was before 3 o'clock on away games. So all my high school kids were getting out before school ended. And then one of our coaches that left early was a math teacher at the middle school. And he ended up having to miss his whole last period 14 times.
And I know being in cross country with 7th grade and 8th grade, being able to participate, that's amazing, but we're having to wait on the middle schoolers, like to start practice, that, like, we have to get home, not that it's their fault, but we have to get home late, we're not able to eat dinner right away, that postpone all of my homework later in the day, causing me to stay up late. So just like things like that.
That's a common, we have several teams where middle schoolers are participating at a varsity level. Hockey, swimming,
15 minutes would be awesome.
yeah.
And the hockey players, they all ice time's at a premium, right? So
Yep, and they
practice starts at
had
what,
2 start
So
times
late. Yeah, it's
for
crazy.
the girls' hockey team, because they, all the high schoolers got there. And they got kids coming from Becker and Big Lake too, because they're a co-op. And then they got kids coming from the middle school, half an hour later.
Yeah.
So it was tough to get a practice all together.
So hopefully we're gonna come back with like this amazing 15-minute solution.
It's awesome that you guys are like willing to take this on. It's a huge task. And
Yes.
like you said, you're never going to please everyone.
Yeah.
No,
No matter
And that was like
what
our
comes of this,
overarching, that was like
somebody's
half the
going to be
meeting,
upset.
I feel.
yeah.
And I would also like to add one more thing, the information and like the presentations, all the Excel stuff. When Sarah says we, that's Sarah, and she is amazing, don't stop, and she is amazing. And every time we have a question for her, she comes back with everything and then some, so our task force has been successful this far, I would say thanks to you, so you can say no, but it's not true. So
Good teaming. Good teaming. It is.
it's good
I thank you
teaming,
guys for
but
coming
you're
to
a good
present
leader,
with me.
yes. I was here anyway.
And I think the district should be proud of the number of teacher coaches. That was enlightening for me to see those statistics and the number, especially coming out of the middle school, the number of teachers that are coaches is. Yeah.
And that's awesome, but I think that's like also what's making it a huge problem with the
Right.
start
Yeah.
start time,
Yeah.
especially with the middle school being so much later.
Yeah.
It is.
We'll be back.
Yeah, it'll be,
Solve
we're
all
looking
the
forward to
problems.
hearing what happens with the Palmer.
Yep.
Good. All right, well, thank you so much for all
Thank you,
your work.
everybody.
Yeah,
Thank you,
awesome.
Jen and Melissa.
Hey Sue, thanks for not walking out with us.
She almost did, I was telling her to go.
Yeah.
I'm sure you will. Get out while she can.
All right, we have a couple action items left here. The first one is our revised budget.
Fair enough.
Yeah, well, obviously, Michelle normally would provide some commentary on this. I've sent, and she put something together to send to you, so that you'd have an opportunity to review that. The finance committee has been able to spend lots and lots of time on this revised budget. But the bottom line is, we set up a budget in last June, for this school year that starts in July. And every year, most districts, you don't have to do it, but most districts will revise their budget based upon more accurate information that they have. When we set our budget last year, taking a look at our unassigned amount, we had a deficit spending of $300,000. That was in our original budget. When we started the school year off and we had less students than what we had projected, lots of worries associated with that number being worse than the $300,000 of a shortfall. Lots of good things have transpired to offset some of that we've kept you in the loop on, most of which had to do with special education, through how we funneled our federal dollars through Rum River, our co-op. That brought us additional dollars to help our budget this year, and then also the cross subsidy piece that we projected $1.4 million of increased revenue. It ended up being more like 1.8. So that's special ed piece that is always the most difficult thing to budget for. And we believe it's important to be conservative when you don't know. You don't want to overestimate your revenue and underestimate your expenditures. We always try and do the opposite of that for good budgeting. So basically what we're presenting to you to vote on to approve is that revised budget that reflects the changes that has transpired. Now those numbers are all based upon if we expend our budget by 100%. We do anticipate that we will have a strong likelihood of underspending our budget this year to the tune of 99% or 98%, which has a strong possibility of us actually adding a little bit to our fund balance. But we do know that next year with our projections, that's when we kind of fall off the cliff with losing those federal dollars. And just having that 2% increase from the state not keeping up with our inflation, where we know with our just approving contracts with our wages and benefits, close to $2 million of increased expenditures. So we are projecting after this year about a $2 million structural deficit where our revenue isn't matching up with our expenditures. But for us to actually work on next year's budget, it's always based upon what our revised budget is now, and that's what we're asking you to approve.
Okay. Any questions for Ben? Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the revised budget as presented?
So, or do you have to read the?
No.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Motion made by Melissa, seconded by Eric Stramberg. Any comments or questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so our last action item is LTFM 10-year plan.
Yeah, same thing with this. I do believe at our last board meeting, we did spend some time on the long-term facility maintenance 10-year plan. Also, finance committee had spent quite a bit of time with this. The thing that's interesting with the LTFM 10-year plan is that everybody understands that it's impossible to be able to project out what 10 years from now will be, but it's a requirement in statute that you have that. And but the interesting thing is with that statute and that law is that you can change it at any time. So it's like the board will approve this 10-year plan, and really what you'll see in the years 1 and 2 are the areas that our building and grounds group and all the consultants that we use have deemed to be the priority areas, the things that need to be taken care of first. And the things that are kind of in that 5 through 10, those are all projections, right? And they can move, but we need to know that they're a future expense that we're gonna have to take care of. So we'd ask for you to approve that 10-year plan.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept the LTFM 10-year plan as presented? Chad, so moved it. Motion made by Chad. Is there a second? Second. Second by Don. Any comments or questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, plan is approved. We have no additions to the agenda. We have a whole slew of future meetings coming up here in the next week. No more business, so would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn? So moved. Motion made by Don, second by Chad. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
One thing I'm just gonna say.